So, hey everybody.
Hi, Trish.
Hello. Hope you're having a good summer. Anyway, so we have Jason and Sam here from the School of Law, and they just finished their brand new redesign, which looks awesome. So, yeah, I'll let them take it away.
I'm Jason Aller. I'm the web application developer for the School of Law.
And I'm Sam Sellers. I'm the graphic designer at the School of Law.
And what you see up on the screen right now is our old website. It was about 5 years old. It's pulled off of archive.org, so we're seeing Nathan's picture twice. But
It's something.
This is the look and feel that we had, and that we were moving forward from, and wanted an upgrade to.
Yeah, I mean, initially the site was just fixed width completely, so if you look at it on a mobile, you just get a lot smaller version of that. And at the time when we were redesigning this site from the previous version, I mean, if you look at the layout that we have here, we didn't really consider the need for any sort of graphic buttons like you see down here. The centers and clinical programs, those were added on. I mean, that space for buttons was kind of added on about 2 years or 3 years after the initial design was completed. And then also the image up at the top, what we had looked at a lot of other law schools was kind of a graphic profiles section, where a lot of law schools at the time were doing these large photos of students, faculty member, alumni, and then linking out to full biographies. And that was kind of what a lot of schools were doing at the time. And through our committee, we decided that we were going to mimic that general that functionality there.
This design also was reflective of a pre-CMS experience design. So it was designed before we had the CMS up and running, and during the course of using this design, we learned a few things. One of which was that deeper within the site, we had a subnav that inset itself into a region that the CMS users could place information into. So the text would either flow around that subnav, or could be set to go straight down in line with that, and that made it harder for our users.
How functional is this archive here?
I think we can go into some of the subpages within here, and so you can see the subnav region. And on some of the subnavs, we even had hide and collapse, which changed the height of that, and that would cause the text to reflow, and there were some issues along those lines, which became evident with use.
Mm-hmm. And neither Jason nor I had any part in this old site in the content hierarchy and the organization of all the content. Like what you can see there on the left-hand sidebar, you see prospective students, current students, faculty administration. It was decided by other people that we are going to organize our pages based on demographics, as opposed to based on any other sort of organization that might make sense or less sense. I mean, I don't know what the decision was to based on demographic, but that's how our pages were organized. And then you can see down below, under the search bar, there's kind of links out to other sections of the site that various users felt were important. Like the library, for instance, it wouldn't be, to a user, it wouldn't be self-evident that the library was situated under, I think it was under, I don't know where it was situated in the demographic organization structure. And so, I mean, amongst other things, we wanted to pull out a few important pages and link them directly, but outside of the demographic organization.
So the process started off under a previous dean of administration we had, and never really got launched. Then we got a new dean of administration, and the project got relaunched. And so the core web team for this was Sam's boss.
Yeah, Pamela Wu, who's a director of marketing and communications out at the law school, and she's been there for 5 years, I want to say now.
Closing them on,
something like that, yeah.
And our new IT director, Stephen Schwarz, and then the rest of that was rounded out with Sam and myself. Mm-hmm. We tried to, as much as possible, enter the process without the two of us having too many preconceived notions.
As much as was possible.
So that we could hear the larger committee that was assembled around that core team. We tried to get input from a lot of the different units, and there were a few meetings where we got everyone together, but a lot of time was spent meeting with individual departments and helping them reorganize their content.
Mm-hmm.
wanted to.
Yeah. So I mean, initially we had a lot of meetings with the four of us that Jason described, the 4 core people, and then also meetings with content owners, like director of admissions, director of career services, and so on. And from those meetings, we came up with a number of goals for the design, and primarily, for the homepage at least, our main goals were to have a large graphic element that would be very flexible, a lot more flexible than this graphic element here as far as labeling size, or I guess the size isn't flexible, the size is pretty static. But as far as labeling and as far as this content was concerned, here we only have room for profiles, but we wanted to update that to be able to display any sort of news stories. We wanted the homepage to be flexible as far as the graphic elements, the graphic buttons were concerned. Here we have to have 2, 4, 6, and so on. And so we wanted to be able to have any number of graphic buttons and also make them a little bit larger, have more room for design. I'm trying to remember what other goals we had for the homepage design.
To get away from this five audience view a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems of the audience view is that financial aid had content that appeared under prospective students and also under current students,
mm-hmm.
and that was actually tied to separate directories. And the interim solution that we had was that there was one editing version of the content in the CMS, and then another version that was mirrored. But then somebody had to remember to publish the mirrored version anytime they changed the live version.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all done to make sure that it had the correct branding on the information, that it showed up, that if somebody had entered through prospective students, they continued to see the prospective students' branding on that content.
The breadcrumbs, yeah.
So we wanted to split that and get away from
we wanted to have no duplicate pages whatsoever. I don't think financial aid was the only one either. I think there could have been a couple others.
There were quite a few that had duplicates. Financial aid was a really
big one,
solid example of it, though.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as the general site design was concerned, looking for something that, I mean, obviously with UC Davis branding, but and Jason never mentioned that we were also trying to do a completely responsive design, and so that was to be taken into consideration with all the designs of all the subpages as well. You know, and like kind of the standard clean, clear, professional, all that type of stuff.
There were also some technical things that we were looking for. I'm big on creating standards compliant stuff, so I wanted one of the things that I wanted early on that sort of went against some of the preconceived notions was I really wanted to have a site that would pass WC3 at the end, or where I could look at the few things that didn't pass and say I'm happy with those. We wanted a site that was faster. Something that we had dealt with was wanting better speed. So that would come with, as part of the redesign, we revamped our servers, upgraded the operating system and the server completely and changed those around, and also realigned the way that we were doing our servers. We had a historic alignment where we had 2 production web servers, one for all of our student-based content and one for our main website and other things. And that was tied back to when students were accessing via SFTP their content on the student web server. We wanted to have a complete separation between that and the server that served the main content. With everyone, all the student websites coming in through the CMS, there wasn't the need for that separation in quite the same way. So we were able to realign and now have a complete production and parallel system for our database, our intermediary layer, and our front-end web servers. And so we did all of that realignment as part of the redesign as well. And the other thing that I had wanted to do, and some of you may have caught my presentation on using Node.js for compiling the CSS and my JS and working with the resources that way, is I wanted all of the things that would be otherwise limitations to in easy evolution moving forward to be set up in a production environment where I could go through and do proper testing of them. And we've already seen a few things that have proven that out a little bit. I still have to write a lot more of the tests for looking for impacts of change, but the ability to recompile all of those resources and then just send them into the CMS has been working well.
Yeah, and one thing that I think that should be noted is through our whole process of doing this whole redesign, Jason and I, and on top of Pamela and Steve, we were all intimately involved with the process of reorganizing content. And the content really did drive the design of the website as far as what our primary navigation categories would be, and then secondary under those, and then tertiary phases even further under that. And so I guess we could talk about the process for how we actually went through. Well, I don't know. Should we show them the website now?
You want to show your let's show your sketches.
Oh yeah, sure.
So
go
here, let me just go turn that over to you.
Oh,
here.
So I don't. In one of our initial meetings with everybody who was involved, with all the content owners, I think somebody just asked a question. They said, "So do you want horizontal or vertical navigation?" They said, "We want horizontal," and so that was it. I mean, there was no big discussion about why or anything like that. It was just okay. Let's just do that. And so then we also discussed, like I said, having this large image that text eventually would be superimposed over. Have space for graphic links, and then have space for news and upcoming events, and also subcategory things, which we were calling faculty, just to point out our faculty scholarship. And really, those are the main elements on the page, on the home page, for to make sure those fit in some sort of a, kind of an attractive, flexible way. And so what I did initially was just put together. I unfortunately threw away all my thumbnail sketches, so I don't have any sketches to show you, but these are all reflected on paper and pencil somewhere. So what I did is I just went through, just in Photoshop, just a number of kind of ideas about margins. I mean, margins between elements, just organization of elements, and these were the first drafts that would be on a full desktop size, and I didn't bring the responsive drafts because really it's just taking the elements and just pushing them down under one another, and it's not really very visually interesting. So there's just a number of different organizations here, and the colors are, I mean, the top section remains consistent through all of them, and really what's just changing is the organization down below. So if we look at this one, was pretty much the one that I presented, I think 4 or 5 of them to the entire committee, and this was the one that we decided upon. That image there at the top is totally responsive, so it'll scale down and up, and everything else. It's bootstrapped, so it has breakpoints.
We will show you the live site as part of this.
And so this was one. This is the final draft, and this is the more fleshed out version. That was the final draft that we didn't quite approve that, because you see here on the right side, there's something that says message from the dean, and I was envisioning that would be a spot where we could insert kind of an important message without having it in a graphic format like the buttons down below. That was eventually scrapped because when we got to the responsive elements, having a box that had a variable height kind of ended up breaking some of the spacing that we put together, as opposed to having the images, which were a consistent ratio. And this was here the final design with that little message from the dean taken out. And then I went into doing just a couple. Really, I didn't do too much variation on the main content areas. This is just like a standard content page. The initial draft, just playing around with image placement, and then also the navigation on the left-hand side. This wasn't final.
One of the important things that we were looking for, though, was a separation, and you can see it in the blue and pink highlighting. The highlighting is not part of the final design quite that same way, but the blue represents what became our tertiary, third-level navigation. The second-level navigation isn't shown here. The quick links gave us the ability to handle anything that falls under the category of C also. And using the CMS, we're able to handle that so that we can mix links that are presented by the page as being related to the page, and also ones that are relevant to that entire folder of things. So for academic success, if for instance, the library reserves were relevant to every single page, that could be made at the folder level, and then individual things can be made at the page level. It allowed us to tie together content and allow people to use not only the hierarchical navigation, but to do wandering to relevant related topics.
And that came in really handy when we were having our content discussions with the higher-ups in the law school administration. For instance, we talked with the Dean of Career Services, and we'd go through what their current webpage, what their current section of the webpage organization was, like what pages they have under their area. And we'd say, does this still work for you? You know, something we want to reorganize this, and maybe, for instance, the Dean of Career Services would say, well, I really think that, you know, financial aid needs to be in our section. We need to display financial, and I think that was kind of the reason that we ended up having multiple duplicate pages on the old site, is because people would say, well, I mean, I have an ownership over this academic area. It really needs to be displayed on my page. And we'd say, well, we're trying to do away with duplicate pages, but here's what we can do. We can do these quick things. And so we sold a lot of individual. I mean, that's how we managed to do away with almost all duplicate pages. With this quick links.
And the long-term responsibility for populating those is going to lie with our subject matter experts, our content providers. So if you browse through our site, they're not, the power is there, it's not fully utilized yet. We're anticipating that over the course of this year, we're going to get people through training. We're retraining and have a lot of this fleshed out more and more over the year to take advantage of some of the things that we've built in.
Mm-hmm. And so what you're seeing up here in the primary navigation area, with starts with the missions centers and programs, blah, 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 that was just my initial, that was kind of a thoughtless organization. Not thoughtless, but it wasn't just a draft organization. And so what we did is we sat down with a whiteboard in a room like this for multiple hours with multiple people throughout the law school, and we just wrote down on the whiteboard just the exact page structure that they would want to have in their section. I mean, if you see here, I started out with 6 of them, 6 sections. We ended up with 8 or 9, I want to say. I mean, we're looking for simplicity, but we through those meetings and through a whiteboard, and just through really forcing the content owners to look at their pages and tell us exactly how they wanted their page sections to be organized is how we came up with the final.
A couple of things helped us in that process. One was we started off those meetings by having, I dumped out from Google Analytics a year's worth of traffic to that person's existing content, and put it in a pivot table in Excel so that we were able to slice and dice it, and took advantage of things like conditional formatting in Excel so I could make it visually clear to the people. You may think that the picture of the cat is what people are coming to visit, but this is the content that they're actually visiting. So to get people to start off with sort of that fact-based thing, remove some of the ego and remove some of the preconceived notions about what they think was important about themselves. Something else that really helped in those meetings is that Sam and I worked together, and it sort of evolved that he would sit at the whiteboard and I would run the mouse. And by doing that, even though other people were in charge of the meeting, we were able to still have quite a bit of influence. A useful technique, you know.
And also, my supervisor Pam is excellent with people, and she stepped in when stepping in needed to happen. That was one of her expertise areas. She's on our side as far as whatever. I mean, she was on our side for most decisions that we thought were important.
So this is the web design version of sitting at the head of the table.
Pretty much.
Yeah. With any of these things, you have to reserve your no's so that they have an impact. I tried to come into it without the preconceived notions, and you have to accept that there are going to be political things that drive decisions. One of our 8 areas is because that is something that the dean feels is important for the next few years, and it might not have otherwise been there, but it is, and it works out, and we were able to incorporate it.
And most people were very receptive to our suggestions as it was. I mean, we've been at the school for so long, and I mean, I feel like the process went very smoothly, and I think it has a lot to do with how long we've been there with the school and how people look at us and trust us, and I feel like we didn't run into too many roadblocks, all things considered.
I have a quick question about the sort of analytics discussion. Were you able to impress upon people that people don't always enter your site through the homepage? What did you see on that? That's one of the constant things I have with people. Really stress homepage design, and this is where we have to present ourselves. And they're completely missing the fact that nearly nobody's entering their site through the homepage.
We had one department that was not only focused on their homepage, but their landing page. And aside from that department, I think everything went surprisingly smoothly on that. That we didn't have by opening up with the by opening up with the analytics and being able to say you're this percentage of the traffic. It took away some of that ever becoming an issue. It sort of said we said we're not driving this politically. We said we're driving it based on the data, and we allowed the political things that were going to happen. But by starting with here's a year's worth of actual traffic, I think we avoided some of those things.
I don't think that discussion ever came up though, as far as where people are entering the site from. I mean, the design and the content of the homepage is being left pretty much up to the marketing department. I mean, of course, taking into consideration important people around the schools, programs or their fields as well. But that is never much of a consideration in the discussion.
The other things that come into play that are law school specific are we have ABA requirements that we have to legally meet. Law schools in general have had some issues over the last few years, and the ABA's response to that is you have to have this text on your homepage. You must have a page that has this title and this information and this layout. So they have dictated some things that have to be adhered to. And so we've done those. The other thing that came about a few years back is that some people at one of the law schools started doing a yearly paper that they write. And so they write an academic paper evaluating the top law school websites. And every year they change the rules
we were
for that.
We were 16 one year, and we got to 50 or so after.
So we've been ranked highly and we've been ranked lowly. Not disproportionately lowly, but lower than our actual law school ranking. And one of the years we got dinged for what was known as girls under trees. that they decided that year it was if you had pictures of co-eds under trees in any form, they were going to take 3 points off because it had become too cliche.
Oh man.
So there are both technical things that they were evaluating for whether you were using metadata properly, whether you were standards compliant, all of these things. But then there were fashion-based things that influenced it over the years.
It was never a concern of ours to get high on the ranking as far as the redesign is concerned. It'd be nice.
It would have been nice, but
yeah, we'll see.
So these are all things driving us forward into that. So let's switch to the current site.
Yeah, this is one of the final just groups of one of the tertiary pages, or one of the main content pages. But it's fine. The site looks pretty similar to that as it is now.
So we'll flip back. And then our current site looks a lot like what you've been seeing. And we did mention that responsive was what we were going for, and we weren't going for just responsive on the front page. So we were trying to make the content as viable as possible across a wide range of sizes. So I'll just do a quick scroll, and if you'll watch the buttons that are on the right, they're going to jump up above the news and upcoming events when we switch into tablet mode. And one of the things that we did there, it's going to work well whether you've got 6, 5, 7 buttons. It's just going to take appropriate spacing. And then as we move forward on down to the phone sizes, it continues to scroll down. We've switched, if you guys use Bootstrap, you'll recognize a lot of the techniques that we're using there. And the upcoming events, which are 2 columns at the other level, drop down to 1 column here. And the footer, which had the logo in it and other things, drops the logo as we're going across. The other big element that we did was an homage to the main campus website. And the main campus website has a drop-down that is a single drop-down for all of the content. And this was also something that has played into our design decision. Because people aren't necessarily sure when they're looking through where financial aid might be, whether it would be under students, if they go looking for it under students, they can still see everything at once. This exposes all, from the primary nav, this exposes all of our secondary nav immediately in one go. Shortly after launch, we added the vertical lines separating them. to give a little bit more visual feedback on that.
Yeah, we heard feedback that if some people thought that if you were hovering over students, everything you saw down below belonged to students as opposed to
That makes sense.
each column. Yeah, so just to give some visual separation between the secondary links there.
And the design was that if, for instance, if you were on a device that did not have hover, a tablet or something, when you click students, you'll get the students' landing page, which has all of that same information that would have been under the hover, plus tertiary level page listings. We added the ability to call out certain buttons. One of the things that jokingly was said is that for all the reading that law students do, they don't like to read. And so for each of these different landing pages, we tried to pick a number of things that would get graphical buttons off to the side.
Those are usually the most visited pages, the pages that the owner felt was most important. There are any number of reasons for selecting those ones there.
And at that point, they get the feedback that they're in the student area by having that done, and now they get the secondary level nav. So if we went from students into registrar, we now have a visual indication that we're in students, in registrar, and then under registrar we're underlining welcome because that's the page we're on. You can see the related links below.
And so we put in the ability to put in right-hand columns in the content pages, and those are right now it says contact us, and we have a couple of width selections for that right-hand column. Let's see, if we go to,
Where have you done 3?
where have I done 3?
Yeah.
I go to admissions,
Okay.
JD, and then top 10. Or I mean, if you even here in this one. So we're utilizing the right-hand column for buttons that the Dean of Admissions said she wanted there, graphic buttons, as well as important deadlines. And in this one, for instance, we're adding just photos just to kind of make the page visibly interesting. And so we're utilizing that right-hand column either for important information, contact information if it's for a department, or also some photographs or just graphic links and any number of things. We had, with the old website, we had people trying to throw photos in all over the place, and so it ended up being very messy, and sometimes they wouldn't have them text wrap it, or they'd have the text wrapped in the wrong way, and so we would just put this together to make sure that if anybody did want photographs, it'd be in a uniform fashion. It looked the same throughout every department's page. I mean, we didn't mention that as far as the content is concerned, we let the content owners maintain their own sites through the CMS. I mean, with some exceptions. If they screw something up, we'll go in and fix it. But really, I mean, we want them to maintain their own content because neither Jason or myself nor anybody else in any department wants to maintain everybody else's content for them. And so what we found was that a lot of people did on the old site just do things badly.
And where possible, we do try and facilitate, like under students, if we go to registrar, the registrar maintains the course descriptions. But we've tried to make this easier for people to use and add value to that. So they'll edit individual course entries, and then this page gets built from all of those. So we're trying to take advantage of the power that the CMS offers to let the subject matter expert put the information in, and then we can go through and say, okay, I want to see low unit courses, high unit courses. We want to find ones that meet a writing requirement. So we're trying to take advantage of the powers that are there and work with those departments and figure out, okay, how can we help you best present your content?
What should we do next here? One thing that we did hear from a few people who were important in the law school is that they liked the demographic organization, even though we organized all the content by areas that made a lot more sense. So what we've done is, just up at the top, we made these little, it's the same content you find down here, but a prospective student could click here and find stuff that would just be uniquely of interest to them. And the same thing for a current student, employer, and so I mean, we maintained that part of the site, but we just made it much more minor in appearance and a little bit harder to find.
Any questions before we move into the next phase?
What's the next phase?
Well, the next phase is let's try the validator, because I said that was one of the goals that I was looking for. And just to make it exciting for myself, I'm going to pick I was going to pick randomly. No, I'm not going to do that. There's no. I already know the answer on what it's going to be for the homepage, so I want to make it a little exciting for myself, so that I don't know exactly what it's going to be. So let's go ahead and let's grab this page here. Like I said, we're trying to be standards compliant, and it's no good if I know the page in advance. So I'm going to click check, and passed with one warning. So all of the pages have a single warning, and there's nothing called out here. The warning is you're using the HTML5 checker. I'm sure I could find pages on the site that would throw a bunch of red up here and tell me that I'm a horrible person as well. But I've been pretty happy with how well that went. The other thing that we were looking at was the accessibility. And for accessibility, I've started using Tenon IO recently. Been pretty pleased with that. HTTPS. The other thing that we did switch is all of our pages will direct you over to HTTPS by default. And then after we made that decision, Google announced, hey, we're going to give everyone who does that a boost up in the rankings. So that was kind of nice. This is something, though, with the accessibility where you're going to see a bunch of errors, regardless of what page. But there were design decisions that went into this. And one of the things that the committee wanted is they wanted certain links to open up in new windows. And accessibility's best practice says don't do that. But we took a look at our audience, and we took a look at the feedback we were getting from students, and accepted that this is the direction we're going to go. So there are errors in the page, but as I scroll down, you're going to see the majority of them are link opens in new window, link opens in new window. Again, it's with accessibility, getting to 100% is really, really hard, and you're going to pick, and this was one where letting the committee, what they were asking for didn't break accessibility badly enough that it was worth pushing back on that. So the majority of those are this way, and if there are a few issues surrounding the search dialog at the top of the screen, wanting that to be more explicitly labeled. Form element has no label, although it does have a placeholder right in there saying search. So depending on your screen reader, that's not going to be a problem. So those were some of the things that we were looking at. The other thing that we were looking at was using Google PageSpeed and taking a look at the results that we were getting off that. So we'll let this run. Again, this was a pick and choose. We were happy with the things when we compared it to the old site that we managed to get rid of. There was some server tuning that we haven't done yet. And there's some content choices that we consciously made not to. We optimized certain things and then said, realistically, this is optimized enough for us, for our needs. So coming down the list, there are 4 things that Google really wants me to work on, 2 things there, but under the already done, we've scored off on 18 of those. And the optimizing images, fairly minor on that. We're optimizing a lot of them, but there's a breakpoint on that with the big images on the front page, just how much more we wanted to do.
Like it would be, just to maintain some clarity and image quality. I don't like compressing so much.
And the minified JavaScript, there's only one bit of my JavaScript that isn't minified. That's on my to-do list. So there are a few of these things that we'll still continue to check off as we do, but we're working toward it, and we're happy with a lot of clarity and cleanliness that we've already achieved with this.
Mm-hmm. So next up is to redesign the internet.
Redesign the internet, redo the LCD screens throughout the building, the wayfinding information, all of these things. There's as with you and your departments, there is a never-ending source of opportunities for projects to work on. Go.
You guys mentioned feedback from students. How did you?
Yeah.
Focus groups. Focus groups. Yeah, we brought in some specifically current students, or 1Ls, I suppose, first-year students who were just finishing up their first year, because our main demographic, the one we wanted to impact the most, would be prospective students. And so we brought in current students, and that's going to be something that we'll do, I think, as the now first-year students. They just got here a week ago, and so they're kind of getting in the swing of law school. We'll do another meeting with that group of students and ask them about their feedback on the website. But really, it was 1Ls that we pizza and using it and feedback.
And pizza was a key ingredient.
Yeah.
Getting it to show up. The other thing that occurs with that is our admissions department does quite a bit of polling of the admitted class, and one of the things that they poll on was, what are you using for your source materials? How did you decide to come to here? And the admissions department showed me this year's results, and they had a bar chart. The one that was twice as large as everything else website, and the website continued to be a standout further down throughout the series of questions. We haven't yet run those results by the whole web team. We will be doing that, and we'll continue to look at the feedback that we get from them as well. We've also gotten we had met with all of the departments, and we've gotten their inputs, including meeting with faculty representatives, those kind of things. So, variety of different techniques for getting that in.
And sorry, one more tag-on question to that. Did you start focus groups and polling and all that stuff with the old site, or were you doing that? Like, were you getting feedback on the old site?
We'd always done it with the old site. Year after year, we do it with the old site.
Oh, okay.
I mean, with any incoming class, we do a whole marketing feedback session, including print materials, website, just general communications,
feedback,
everything. Yeah, exactly. So we knew a lot of their beef with the old site, which is, stuff that we all completely agreed with and were already familiar with. And then, so we had all that feedback from the old site, and then with the new site, we didn't get their feedback until a little bit later on in the process, about halfway through the process is getting about that.
Is that organized by your marketing team, or do you guys go out and recruit students?
Yeah, it's organized by our marketing team. I mean, we don't have to go out and recruit students exactly. I mean, you mean students who would be
whoever for your focus groups and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just sent out an email and just saying who's interested in free pizza and sitting down for an hour and talking about marketing-related stuff with your decision to come here. And so we always poll the brand new class every single year, or not poll, but meet with them.
And given the way law school works, we have the students in for 3 years. We're averaging a class size of about 200. So we've got a smaller population by far than most of the places on campus.
I mean, a student body of 500, but individual classes of 150 to 200.
Yeah. And then that's augmented with our international students. So we're also taking a look at their needs separately. But we have a slightly different makeup and structure than the rest of the campus in terms of how our audience is set up.
Yeah. And we actually maintain a really close relationship with the student body too. I mean, because the classes are so small, we end up interacting one-on-one with at least, in any given year, at least 20% of them that individual interaction with those students. Any sort of projects that they are working on or we're working on, we need their feedback. We're just in the hallway. It's a fairly small building too.
And that comes into play that Sam has the benefit of he's producing print materials and posters for them coming up for symposiums, so he's working with them throughout the course of the year for law review symposiums, all of our other symposiums, and for some of our other groups we have groups a lot of student groups that are just student groups, and then we have a section that have been deemed to important enough for PR value that they get additional time from Sam to put materials together. I meet with students as we're doing training to get them into the CMS so that they can work with their websites, and we're using the same CMS that we use for the main site for all of those student sites. Again, very different from how the main campus would handle that. So we have some different interactions.
But you'd say your interaction with the students probably be the most The close interaction.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely key when it came to the design phase, and it came to a lot of the decisions that were made. I mean, interactions with students, but also as far as the visuals and the aesthetic is concerned. I mean, I've been overseeing that for 8 years, and so I mean, I'm intimately involved with the identity of the school. So my past experience really influenced that, as well as making decisions that would be a benefit to potential incoming class or any prospective students.
When you guys ran into those situations that you're talking about in meetings where you might have to pull in family or something like that,
yeah.
And then resolve a conflict, did you find that focus group examples were better than analytics, or vice versa for convincing people about certain subject areas?
Some people in a department couldn't be convinced, and so you'll see some differences here as to how this landing page is being used as opposed to others. So with some of it, we could win it. With some of it, it was, this is how it's going to end up being.
I don't know if we always gave everybody a really valid, like, kind of, if we strive to convince other people of our viewpoint, or if we just said, this is the way it's going to be.
Right.
I'll tell you why, but you don't have to agree with me.
Right.
And so that wasn't. I mean, and for a lot of, for a small group, we would have to do convincing and get them on board. But for a larger group who was involved with the site, that wasn't always necessary. So I mean, yeah, there was a lot of analytic explanation, and there was a lot of feedback and general best practices and what people were interested in, explanations of that.
Those people that were really interested in their content had generally approached us beforehand about reorganizing their content under the previous design. And we had done a lot to accommodate them under the previous design. So with this design, we were giving them a lot more freedom. And for those people, the people that were really active along those lines, in particular our career services office, really was interested in trying to make what they were providing to the students easier for the students to use. And so their content reflected that in a previous shift. We reorganized and took away one of our 5 previous portals and made it the career services portal because there was so much focus on that, and shifted things around. And so their work had already been done, and it was just a matter of formalizing their reorganization under the new structure. In some cases, and I'll just go into this, the landing page here deviates from some of the others because they insisted on having their contact information presented. So what on other pages is just here are the links, starts migrating into content. So there were some where we won, and there were some where we just said, okay, yeah, we'll do it that way.
I mean, the library views. So I mean, the way that we viewed the landing pages with Jason was that they were just kind of a repository, just
those are good. It just needs a good one.
Okay, but anyhow, that this page was just at a single glance. Here's everything that's under the international section, under the international category. And so what you see here is about is reflected up here, and each individual page under that is there. LLM, same deal, summer program, so and so. And so really, I mean, we wanted the information up here to reflect this information down here, one-to-one. And we also, they may have gone off a little bit too, huh? The idea behind these buttons is that the link that you'd find in this graphic button here, you could also find it in this section, except that we just wanted to pull it out because it was a page that was visited more often than everything else, or the content owner said this is really important, we want to highlight it. And so the library did deviate from that, and that a lot of these links here aren't reflected over here.
Or they leave the site entirely.
Or these buttons will go to an external page, which, I mean, and so in situations like that, we just said that's fine. The library viewed this homepage, or this landing page, as their homepage, whereas other departments, they viewed it as just a repository. And it really, we found in our test focus groups also, that very few students actually went to the landing pages, that they would go to the drop-down and then they would click directly from there into their secondary page. But the landing pages really come
With the exception of faculty, which was always designed to be a showcase for faculty.
But we found that the landing pages really become more important when you're in the mobile version, because then you have to click on academics, and this is when these important pages are up top, but also this is where you can see everything that's available within it. And so these landing pages are much more important on a mobile version. And the faculty landing page is a faculty directory as opposed to one of the other landing pages here. And so this is just, can go through that?
Yeah. So for faculty members, and let me pick one that I know has a lot of material, we wanted to, in this case, we really focused on what's going to happen when they print that. So we wanted it to be something where if somebody prints the faculty member profile page, boom, it's going to look good. And it's going to put everything together, and it's going to have all of their things from publications to projects, an effective rough version of their CV. Most of them do have their CV linked directly from the side. For marketing purposes, we also wanted to link their high-resolution headshots so that they were directly available for media to use. But we broke this down so that they would have their bio first, and then as you walk through the tabs, you can get into other content, listing all of the news stories on our site that mention that professor, listing all their publications. And for a number of our faculty members, they even link out to the publications at an appropriate location. And then we added another tab for professional activities, which we never had before, to highlight more about what that professor was doing.
They wanted it, yeah. And I think the idea is that faculty members could request a tab that just whatever they thought was important, if there's a need for that.
Do faculty maintain their own pages?
No, that's the idea, but they don't. Some of them.
When we first introduced the CMS years ago, we put on a hour-long lunchtime training, had handouts.
Do you have pizza?
We may have skipped the pizza. That's the crucial thing. Out of all of the people that attended, 3 asked for their passwords to be, their accounts to be hooked up, and I think 1 or 2 ever did any editing, and that fell off. Part of that is an expectations and culture thing, I think. One of the things that we would love to do, and that didn't get done as part of the redesign in order to bring the redesign in on time, is the faculty publications. If we go take a look at those, there is a standard for the citation, and I would love to have that citation fully follow the standard and be a trackable data element, so that we can put together a combined faculty bibliography, so that we can have a page automatically generated and saying, these are all of the works by people in the law school that relate to immigration. These are all of the books that were published within the last year, to be able to slice and dice and reuse that information in multiple ways. And that's still a long-term goal, but right now that content is not flexible enough and reusable enough. That would be something that I'd really like to do. The other thing on here is I'd like to be able to have, when you see his selected publications, I'd like there to be a button that says, sort these in by chronological, sort these by type, and when you sort it by type, then it puts up subtitles, books, law review articles, newspaper, opinions, all of the different types of things. And then another one that would be by subject, all of his writings on immigration, all of his writings on human justice, all of his writings on constitutional law, and be able to break it out and make the content more usable. If you're glancing at this, it's a wall of text. You might miss his most important publication, or the most important publication to you out of that list. And if we can enable that content, it has a better chance of you finding what you're looking for. Yeah. And that one, just due to the amount of labor and the fact that we're going to have to get the faculty members to report their publications in a timely and consistent manner, and and track those. We've looked at using MyInfoVault. We've looked at a couple of these other things to see if we could pull it from SSRN, which is the which is the preferred repository for the majority of law school professors. We've looked at a lot of those options, and we haven't found the ideal solution yet.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that was awesome.
Very cool.
Um,
Do you guys use SAS or any? Did I miss if you use SAS or less or any
I'm
CSS
in
processor?
in the compilation. I'm compiling through Compass, so I have a version of Bootstrap that is the Compass version of Bootstrap, and then I'm adding my own things on with that. I'm doing linting specific, not CSS linting, but SCSS linting of all of the things that go in there, and running that all through Grunt under Node.js.
Got it.
And that's, like I said, that's worked out pretty smoothly for me. I kind of touched on that in a previous presentation. And one of the goals is when I have some free time to clean that up and release that. Right now it's a repository if you're in Scott's UCD GitHub. I believe, Scott, you said that anyone that's in the developers group can see my code in there. So there's a project called LawWeb that has that. But right now there's a lot of law school specific stuff, and I'd like to make a clean, generic version of that so that anyone else that was starting with something could utilize that.
Cool.
Did you guys use any kind of like style guide, like with interactive elements or anything? Or does anybody here?
During development, what we did, and this is something where I've made a mistake, I allowed the project deadline to get us to launch without having all the training materials. And since launch, I've been trying to finish off the style guide and put together our training materials. Got a nice microphone, got Camtasia to record individual screen things. But during development, Sam and I would meet
Weekly, bi-weekly.
a couple times a week, and one of the tools that we used is I found a couple of nice pages that had all of the HTML5 elements with data together. So I'm spinning up the Grunt server here, and then I can go through when that comes up on the web and show you one of those pages. And it basically just had a list here under all HTML where we were saying, what is the behavior going to be for spacing between the heading elements if somebody puts a heading right next to a heading, which how is it going to appear for each of those headings with text? So Sam and I could talk about what we wanted to do in terms of design, and how are we going to handle if somebody bolds a heading? Well, we decided that we would just go with a different coloration on that because all of our headings started off bolded anyway. And as you'll see, we're going down through here. What is it going to look like when you have things? And some of these are, we started mixing law school content in. Then what are our stylings going to be for each and every one of the different things you can do, whether it's audio elements, whether it's going to be SVG, video, pre-formatted text. So we're checking things that we're not ever anticipating using. Pre-formatted text, for instance, the only place that would ever appear on the web is if I'm putting together a page for other IT people under the IT thing about here's how we did this. But we talked as we went through all of these different elements, and then we created another page that had what we call local styles, where we started bringing in content from the existing site and talking about how we would style existing content. So we spent a lot of time working not only with the design of the overall page, for the home page, the individual subpages, but also how the elements would interact together during the course of this.
We met frequently though. We went over this.
Can you email this out, or like the Grunt plugin?
I can. This is a page that's part of what I have up on Scott's repo.
Oh, okay.
And I can also do a stripped out version of that HTML page. I think I got the base thing that I started working from it was one of the HTML5 sites. I'm sorry, I don't remember it off the top of my head. And that saved me a lot of time just typing that up. And then I just kind of expanded on that.
It's cool.
I'll try and find it and send you a link to that so you can share it with everyone.
Maybe it's that from the Euroman team?
No, that's something separate on there. That was just part of a base page from here.
Yeah.
And played around with, is the page going to look good when it's short content? Playing with a number of our different things with how is it going to behave when you have a form. So this was a chance to try those things out.
Yeah, that's cool. We had it for like the start of our redesign, and then it just got like neglected. So this one, having it dynamic is pretty sweet.
And
Maybe
something
we
like
should
this
talk.
is just handy.
Maybe we should give a talk on living style guides.
Maybe before we fix ours, like it happens.
But I'm writing up the style guide for users right now, and it's already up to 15 pages.
Yeah.
And largely it's plagiarized from other universities' style guides just to get the framework of it. The thing that I did really appreciate is I found one site that had an opening that said, we'll help you get your web content up, but we also reserve the right that if you put up something wrong, we're going to change it and tell you about it after the fact if we have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to make that a little bit more polite, but try and get that through our style guide and through the process of getting through our web committee and out and actually published that, if you're putting up good stuff, we're not going to touch it, but if your stuff is outdated, if it's not accessible, if it violates any of the campus policies or procedures, we reserve the right to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm hopeful that that'll give us something in black and white to point to for those occasions when someone has gone off and done something on their own.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next month might be web typography, but I need to get confirmation on that. But if not, does anybody want to do a class? Were you thinking about it last time?
We'll figure it out.
Anyone?
Trying to wrangle somebody.
Anyone? Yeah. Okay. Well, you know how to find me if you want to volunteer. Cool. Thanks for coming.
This is good.